I'm Jaymie Scotto Cutaia, CEO of Jaymie Scotto and Associates, public relations marketing event planning firm, which is focused on 100% on telecommunications. Joining me here today is my fabulous panel. Starting in the way back corner over here, we have Mike Sevret. He's the EVP and Chief Strategy Officer of Cross River Fiber. And with more than 15 years of sales leadership and executive management, his role at Cross River is to lead the strategic vision and business development functions for this organization. Cross River is a New Jersey-based grassroots organization covering network design, management, and construction. Walter Greaney, sitting next to him, to his right, is the Senior Asset Manager, Portfolio Management for Digital Realty. Digital Realty is a data center solutions provider for many of the world's leading enterprises with more than 100 properties in over 30 markets globally, including Piscataway, 111th 8th, Weehawken, Somerset, and Cutaia. Nathan Boyle, gentleman in the middle, is the head of IT operations for Lord Abbett and Company, an independently private held U.S. investment management firm with over $130 billion under management. Nathan's responsible for a number of technology restructuring and process improvement initiatives. John Bonczek, he's a vice president at Telx, responsible for the strategic direction of the Telx sales organization. If you don't know Telx, they are a leading provider of interconnection and data center services in high demand markets, which includes 13 U.S. markets with 5 facilities right here in the New York, New Jersey area. And my friend Robert Bianco, right here to my left, serves as Vice President and GM of TW Telecom Manhattan, responsible for the overall financials of TW in the city, driving revenue and supporting overall growth of the New York, New Jersey markets. Robert is a noted industry expert on optimal network solutions, business continuity, and DR. TW, if you don't know yet, is the 3rd largest business Ethernet provider in the country, and that's connecting more than 18,000 commercial buildings to its national fiber network. So here we are today to talk about something that's near and dear to all of our hearts, Hurricane Sandy. So tell me quickly, how many in this room lived in an area affected by the superstorm? Show of hands. Yeah, most of us. And how many here had to sort of do that balancing act between folks at home, your security of your family and your home, with also what's going on in the office and your business continuity? And a lot of my panelists here today will share that. So just to give a little context here, the recent Oklahoma tornadoes and even the Boston Marathon bombings, we clearly don't need to stress how important it is to consider and reevaluate our network and business continuity plans in the wake of natural and man-made disasters, which can strike any time and anywhere. Sandy, as you can see on this slide here, in particular was hard to plan for ahead of time, as it basically threatened the entire east coast of America with multiple projected paths. Sandy made landfall near Atlantic City on October 29th. Devastation was massive, particularly to the Jersey Shore, which entire communities are underwater. This is a famous Seaside Heights picture of the roller coaster that was brought out to sea by the storm, and it was only just a few weeks ago when they sent a crane in to remove it. Hoboken, New Jersey, taxis completely submerged. And as you know, the storm surge devastated the city, looking more like a sci-fi movie than Fox News coverage. Alphabet City, underwater. If you notice, there's police vehicles also submerged there. Breezy City in Queens looks like a war zone. Buildings rocked to the very foundation, while nearby neighbors' homes are relatively intact. 6 alarm fires destroying homes also in Queens. The 86th Street subway submerged. Ground Zero, an area that recent construction and development became a sign of hope for the city and the nation, turned into waterfalls. The FDR Drive underwater. Here's a graphic pulled together by the Huffington Post, illustrating the power outages by the millions, and you can see that this largest circle right here, New York, New Jersey, estimating 2.5 million people without power. So Sandy by the numbers, just real quick here. National Hurricane Center estimates 72 lives were taken by Sandy directly, and then 87 more indirectly through cleanup accidents, hypothermia from lack of power, more than $750 billion in damage, and yet 3 months later, after the holidays and a couple of snowstorms, Congress approved $50 billion in emergency aid. As of last month, New Jersey had about 39,000 families still displaced. That's down from 161,000 the day after the storm. In New York, we have over 250 families still living off of FEMA, with countless others living with relatives in temporary rentals. Flood insurance is the latest plague, with numbers projecting as high as $30,000 a year, depending on how close the buildings are located to flood zones and the ability to raise your buildings. And if your DR plan is to simply forget about Sandy, the NOAA warns us that 2013 hurricane season is projected to be, quote, extremely active, with a 70% likelihood that we'll see 3 to 6 major hurricanes with winds over 111 miles an hour. And guess what? Storm season starts tomorrow. So let's go to our panelists. What did we learn from Hurricane Sandy? I'll start with you, Mike.
So basically, I mean, from a Cross River standpoint, you know, fiber optic provider and a sea like building networks, you know, we were very fortunate from a network side not really to take a hit because, you know, we just got lucky, very simple, that our fiber was on one side of the street and not the other, or aerial, underground, and what have you. But what we've learned, and a lot of our customers, right, suffered, you know, outages and disasters. But from my partners and I, from an overall reach, and we live in New Jersey, or our networks are in New Jersey and in the metro areas, and I've suffered some personal loss from Sandy as well with the house that got destroyed. What we learned is to, you know, obviously really kick the tires and really sit with your clients going forward and really ask them what's their plan, really take an in-depth look, and especially from a fiber optic side. Do you really have the diversity and the redundancy you think you paid for? Because when unfortunate things like this happen, you realize you might not have that, and especially, you know, from looking at just maybe a Visio diagram and what have you. Well, what we've done with clients post and pre-Sandy is really sit down and draw and show them networks that we're building, and they drive the routes with us and make sure that that route is completely separate from what they currently might have or think they might have. One of the big things that I think people are really focusing on now, and in a contract for any folks that do the legal side of things, there's always a clause in a contract, force majeure, right? Incidents that you might not ever think would happen. Well, guess what? It happened. So now when you look at these contracts, what we see from our internal due diligence when we talk to clients now, well, the force majeure part of those contracts are a very big focus point, which normally they were like, well, hey, what are the odds, right? So that's a real big lesson learned and a big focus, you know, point going forward on what does that really mean if, God forbid, something like this happens again, and what does that clause in that contract mean? Because how can you respond to it, and what are the things that you can do to really put the effort on trying to get those customers back up and running if you can, and you know, so that's one of many, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Walter?
Well, from a digital standpoint, we advertise that, you know, digital realty is the data center solutions. And from Sandy, the solution wasn't like the infrastructure, it wasn't the what we do. It was the people that were working there, and that were in our facilities for a week. It was just the execution of what is the solution to the problem in front of us. We're well prepared in our operations about okay, we're gonna have our fuel trucks lined up. We've got all of the pieces necessary. But there's a few of the unexpected things like that you wouldn't think of. Towels. People being there that were stuck at the facilities for a full week. We have showers and facilities, but we don't have some of the human touches that we needed. So we took a little more of an evaluation of like, what can we do to improve the facilities, the offerings, stuff, that if there is an isolation of people there, that we can accommodate them, accommodate their needs, and which translates into their business, making sure that their business doesn't go down. I mean, we can get the fuel trucks. We've done that. We have the technicians, but it's the other things that we have to concentrate on and make us not just another landlord, but really that we're partnerships with people, and that's how digital really wants to have the relationship. So it's a relationship building.
And Nathan?
Sure. I think one of the things we've realized is we're addicted to three things. We're addicted to electricity, gasoline, and connectivity. And if we lose one or more of those, things really fall apart. And it was very evident during Sandy that we had a significant problem on our hands. Lord Abbott's based over in the Jersey City area, and we lost access to our headquarters building. We're a mid-sized firm. We don't have the geographical redundancy that many of the large firms do. And it was extremely challenging. And it generally became a people problem for us. Going back to Irene, we had a lot of lessons learned from that point, even though it didn't impact the area as greatly. We realized that as an SMB, we needed a highly mobile workforce, regionally redundant infrastructure, and redundant emergency office space for our organization. And we put those things in place. When Sandy came upon us, we were very proactive. We had learned a lot during Irene, and we positioned our assets. We had everyone prepared. We'd fully tested beforehand. But the challenge really became that our infrastructure, our offices, our mobile solutions were fully functional, but our people were stuck in various locations, some of them suffering personally, and trying to balance and keep an organization running during that challenging period is very, very, very difficult.
Right. John?
Yeah, from a Telx perspective, we had a couple of key takeaways. Obviously, built all the redundancies in place. Facilities seem to function very well, but you prepare for outages. You don't necessarily expect those that last the 5 to 10 days. Some of the things that became difficult were sustaining communications. Lost landlines in our facilities downtown, and with power outages around, cell towers were losing power, running out of battery, running out of fuel. So cell communications became spotty. So one of the things that we've done, lessons learned for future, we've now distributed some prepaid phones with an alternate provider to our primary provider, to our technicians and key on-site management personnel, as well as satellite phones to some of the very key personnel that we need to sustain communications with, regardless of what happens. And another thing, talk about some small amenities that we had lessons learned from the blackout back in 2003, where okay, we're in downtown Manhattan, but you can lose the convenience of having local food, restaurants and convenience stores. So we started keeping rations on site, food and water, for employees that may need to stay there for sustained periods of time. We didn't plan for that 5 to 10 days. We had 2 or 3 days worth. So we're upping our stash there, because now we need to anticipate situations where we need to take care of people for a sustained period of time.
Robert?
So for a TW perspective, I think we learn no matter how much we prepare for anything, you're never going to be 100% ready. While our network was up and running, all through lower Manhattan, when the buildings went down and we lost electric, being in over 70 markets throughout the U.S., we have the means to bring support into New York City. But where we struggled was getting into New York City, and logistically bringing fuel to our generators, getting power to our buildings that we needed to bring back up was something no one planned for. I think some of the other things we learned was how we actually build our buildings in New York City. Again, being a full-service fiber provider, when we come into buildings, we like to install our equipment traditionally in basements, and then run fiber through risers and be able to service tenants in all our buildings. But with that being said, when salt water enters the basement and you're having 30, 40 feet of salt water sitting in a majority of the building's basements, nothing's going to work. So I think, one of the bigger lessons we learned is, getting that stuff out of the basements right now and, going a level or two above in the buildings, and installing this equipment. So when power does get restored, our network would be back up and running and get our customers up and running a lot sooner than later.
Right, yes, and actually, in responding to that question, you guys got into a lot of the details that I like to see in your stories of lessons learned. But particular to the New York, New Jersey area, what were some of your hurdles or successes when it came to fuel deliveries or infrastructure or redundancy? That's particular to our area. John, do you want to start?
Sure.
From a Telx perspective.
Yeah, again, these are the things that you plan for. That's why you even have generators. You hope not to need them, but when the time comes, they need to work. You need to have fuel in them. You can't plan for certain things, like Rob said. You can't plan for bridges and tunnels being blocked by 4 or 5 feet of water. And that happens. You may be cut off. You do your due diligence. You do the best that you can, and we feel like what we had done with fuel providers leading up to the storm, and it's part of our normal practices. Did the job. We always make sure in every market where we control our generators and fuel tanks that we have multiple fuel providers. We make sure that those fuel providers each have redundant distribution stations, and that our redundant providers have distribution centers unique to each other. So our basic policies around how we select our criteria for selecting fuel providers did come through. I'm not sure if they were able to meet SLAs and get fuel there in 4 hours because we were underwater downtown. But the bottom line is, because we had such redundancy in our providers and they had redundancies among themselves, we were able to get fuel before we ran out.
And Rob, as a client of Telx and TW, how'd you guys fare?
Very well. Again, as we know, fiber is pretty strong when it comes to taking on salt water or anything. It's a lot different than copper. But being having that type of network and having the resiliency of it, really fared well for us. Like I said, our customers were up and running as soon as they had power restored to their buildings. A lot goes into, I want to say, our operations department as well. Living on Staten Island and the majority of my team being on Staten Island, logistically, again, trying to get into Manhattan was an issue, and dealing between family and friends and making sure everybody was safe at home, and then having to get into the city and make sure what we do, support our customers, gets taken care of was a huge balancing act. But again, what I really appreciated was having guys like our friends from Telx and from Cross River and majority of our other vendors, having everybody really come together in a crisis time and working together. That's something you don't see very often. I could tell you a story. I remember being in the streets on Broad Street, right in front of 75 Broad, and it was our TW guys, and we had our friends down from Cutaia, and there were some other providers there, all trying to get into the manhole together. But just having who's sharing tools and knowledge and working with each other, because it really became the customer first at that point. Yeah. For anybody. And it's humbling to have that aspect of it all, because it really becomes a common goal of our organizations to really treat our customers as priorities. But having the relationships in the city with our other vendors, to me, that's what made all the difference. I think it really got us all up and going a lot sooner than later.
And Walter, you're in key facilities, 111th, Piscataway. How were you? How did you fare?
We fared pretty well. We have national contracts. We had 6 large tankers coming up from Virginia, plus on a 24 hours a day basis. Plus we had local contracts. But one of the things that became apparent real soon, we were going through about 90,000 gallons a day in our own facilities of diesel fuel. One of the things that became apparent real quick was customers that were in our facilities, but were also in other facilities we don't own, what their issues were. And that became apparent from talking with the sales directors. So we were shipping fuel in probably about 100,000 gallons of greater than 100,000 gallons to off-site, to other locations that we didn't own, just of our customers that were in, not necessarily our tenants in other buildings, but in competitors' buildings. But it was, is recognizing that. We also brought in, and we got away with it for about 4 hours, with a gasoline truck, because because of Sandy, most of the gas stations were down. They couldn't pump gas. So we brought a gasoline truck in and pumped about 1,200 gallons one day, 4 hours to all the technicians on site so they can get back and forth. Yeah. That was good until the fire department shut us down.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. But one of the bigger challenges though was roll-up generators. Even for further backup. That was we had to get it. One of them came from Minnesota that we had to get trucked over here from Minnesota. We never used it, but it was to give one of our customers just that feel of here it is. We're not going to let you go down if we can help it. And it worked. That piece worked out well for us. That did.
And Mike, from a dark fiber perspective?
Yeah, so from a fiber perspective, as Cross River is a builder of fiber optic networks, right? We own it and maintain it. We're a utility in New Jersey and the metro areas. So what we've seen and lessons learned, again, you can never be ready. But when we always have our emergency restoration crews, splicing crews, truck rolls ready at any time to go out and obviously maintain our own network, but others if needed. One of the big things that we learned. In New Jersey especially, you had a lot of trees that were down, right?
Yeah.
So power lines, trees falling in New Jersey especially, that was probably one of the biggest issues. You can't access your network if you need to because you're not the priority at that time. Right? They can, I don't want to say care less, but they can care less, the power companies, about your fiber optic cable. They don't care who's riding over it, whether it's a financial or somebody else. So those are things that your SLA and things like that prepare for, right? 4 hours to mean time to repair, to respond. Well, that all goes out the window. So your priority as a provider is to try to get your clients up and running and be proactive, and you just can't access anything for safety reasons, right? Utilities take priority, the power companies, and making sure everything is fixed on their end first before you can go in and access your cable. So we looked at it from an internal standpoint and really focused on, okay, can you do this different? Can you be more proactive when, God forbid, these things happen again? But as having great partners, friends, Telx, and Digital Realty and TW, and really being able to work together. We're in all the facilities at Telx in New Jersey and Digital New Jersey, and with the gasoline that you're mentioning, I believe it was in their Piscataway location, right? Yeah, that was a big help. And we actually had clients of ours that are your clients as well. That really helped them tremendously. But all in all, you just have to really know, hands down, where your network is from a fiber provider, and that's what's very important about knowing every single piece of fiber you built, owned, and operated. Because if you don't have good records, and a lot of the big carriers, they might not know what they have, and when it comes to these outages, it's very hard for them to figure out where that problem lies.
So Nathan, how do we do from a financial firm perspective?
I mean, we're more of an end user. I'm actually still jealous, and I never thought of commandeering a gasoline truck.
Yeah.
For us, people are our fuel, and we had to get extremely creative in moving people around. And I didn't commandeer the gasoline truck, but I commandeered our car service company, 7x24 until further notice. It becomes quite interesting when you're sending car service from Westchester to pick up people in southern Jersey and back and forth, and having the car service company be creative in their refueling services. So we almost had a supply chain of car service running up and down the tri-state area just for our purpose. And then we had the connectivity issue. We had staff that were able to connect, and our mobile solutions worked very well for them. But for those that either didn't have power or connectivity, it was quite challenging. Amusingly, our staff that fared the best were those that had POTS lines. Good old plain old telephone service worked perfectly, because even if the power lines were down, phone service was working, and those with ADSL had full connectivity to our mobile solutions. The challenges with other types of consumer connectivity services is if there's no electricity, those services don't work. The cable modem companies, they have repeaters that are dependent on electricity. Fiber companies have repeaters. It's extremely challenging. So for us, it became a lesson learned in creativity around moving people around the organization and moving around tri-state area.
And cognizant of time, I just wanted to get a one-line response from you guys, a little zap through the panel action here. Have you noticed a change in your client and prospect relationships and communications? You know, after 9/11, everything was disaster recovery. Then months passed by, and you know, we started talking about lowest latency. Now it seems like there's urgency again with reevaluating our networks.
Yeah.
Can you just quickly? We'll start with Mike and come on down.
I think from a real simple one-liner is that the customers are really much more focused and truly looking under the hood of the fiber network diversity and redundancy that they have or what they're looking to get. I mean, that's really important because they have to really make sure they're buying and paying and getting and truly getting that diversity from the fiber network, you know, separation and dual points of entry and things like that. It's a really big focus now.
Walter?
It's definitely been more of a relationship builder with our customers, that we're just not the landlord that picks up the rent check every month that you don't want to see. That we're, you know, they recognize that we're there to add value and to protect their business as we said we would.
Nathan?
Hey, my customers are internal. They're our business users in the organization, and closely partnering with our business users and not having IT be the sole focus of disaster recovery has been very, very important. So practice, proactiveness, and continuous testing and partnering with our business users.
John?
Yeah, I think for the most part, our customers who traditionally plan for redundancy for disaster recovery still do, and are glad that they did. You know, we did see a bit of an uptick in some of the smaller applications, new customers who house their mission-critical data and online applications in their offices, who now realize the benefits of coming to facilities. So, you know, seeing more new customers and you know, relief from our legacy customers that they chose the way they did.
Yeah, so I'm going to go back to the diversity piece again. You know, it's not just about price anymore, and I think a lot of our customers realize that too. It really becomes who has that network, who owns it, who runs it, and what does that building look like, what providers are truly in there that can bring the services up and running. You know, again, it's really knowing your network and knowing, you know, who can do what for you and when.
Which leads us beautifully into what's our people redundancy. It's one thing to be you know, prepared for the disaster and you have your plan, but then actually going through the disaster and managing people who are dealing with the safety of their own families. And you already talked a little bit about this, Rob, but the safety of your networks. So balancing act. How do we plan for the redundancy of people moving forward? You know, do you guys have an answer? Again, sort of fast bulleted, and then we're going to open it up to the audience.
Yeah. I mean, from a Cross River standpoint, we're a small niche, you know, kind of a boutique shop, so there's not a tremendous amount of employees internally, but from a people standpoint, from your emergency response teams and those folks, you have to plan, and if you have one or two contractors that typically do your restoration and repair and maintenance, well, for these types of situations, then you have to maybe get a couple more that are willing to go out and work, and so you really put some redundancy into those folks and really staff it up, and that means, you know what, spending the money.
Yeah.
Spending them, you know, to make sure those plans are in place and make sure you have the right people that go out and respond, and you know, you really have to put the money out there sometimes to make sure you can, you know, adapt and respond.
Yeah. Walter, would you agree?
Oh, I definitely agree with that. It's you know, it depends on the size of the organization and the resources you have and where you can draw them from. That we plan pretty well for that, but one of the big things that we have to do is manage the information to our customers, because everyone's very anxious in these times, and it's how we message what we're doing to give you know, a clear and accurate picture of what's going on. And that was one of the strong points that we learned this year, is how to put that together so that there's as minimal confusion as possible.
Nathan?
I think we fared very well during Sandy just because we were proactive, and it's really, really how you need to deal with people. Be extremely proactive and plan ahead of time when a disaster is imminent, whether or not it's going to impact you. You know, act as though it's going to impact you.
Yeah, JB?
Yeah, I mean, Sandy afforded us the luxury of a good week of notice. So, you know, our policies are that we start having calls twice a day with the heads of every key organization in the company. We were able to plan, you know, make sure that every relief shift, I mean, our facilities require on-site engineers, technicians, managers. We need client services up and running. They could be remote, so we were able to plan for that. I'm not going to say it was easy. You know, nothing about Sandy was easy, but we did have that luxury of planning ahead of time. But the key is having those BCDR policies in place to plan for when they spring up out of nowhere, like it happened in 2003, which we do have in place.
Yeah.
I mean, our luxury is having, you know, being in 70+ markets, calling upon our peers to come out and, you know, travel to the East Coast to help us out and really relieve some of the local techs and, you know, our operations crew to, you know, give them some time off and to help get things going again. You know, it's, again, logistically, though, you know, trying to get these people into the city was our biggest, you know, concern. But, you know, we have enough people out there, you know, throughout the U.S. to you know, back us up and really, you know, get our network up and running again.
Yeah. So do we have any questions from the audience? Yes, sir.
What's the longest any of you have to run on generator power?
JB, you want to start?
Yeah, we had to run 5 days at the longest straight.
And Digital Realty?
7 days straight.
About the same 5 days.
Rob?
Depending on the buildings we were at, I mean, Lower Manhattan, obviously, you know, some of our buildings, we had generators running for, you know, a month and a half, until power was completely restored. But some of our other facilities, you know, a couple of days, we were back up and running.
And Mike?
We don't rely on the power. So we're a dark fiber provider, so it's our customer side of it. But from the buildings that we're in, the data centers, I mean, basically they are all running for, you know, 5 to 7 days in New Jersey, basically on backup power.
Another good lesson learned about redundancy, right? Yes, sir.
Do any of you leverage chilled water, and if so, was that an issue as well, having access to bottled water after the storm?
Chilled water. Anyone?
I mean, we have chilled water in some of our cooling applications, but that I know of, we didn't have any issue losing access to utility water.
Do you not lose access to the utility?
That not that I know of. You know, I'm the sales guy. You know, I can bring that question back. Hey, it's just,
Where's Hunter? You can answer that. How about Walter?
No, we don't, in these facilities in the Northeast, we don't have chilled water.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Live in Florida, so appreciate and understand hurricanes. In 2004, we had 3 hurricanes cross our data center, and you know, our hearts reach out to New York when we saw what happened here because we're used to it. It's in our backyard all the time.
Yeah.
This is obviously a storm of the century. What lessons specifically have you learned from, you know, 2 major disasters, both 9/11 and Sandy, that you think that are incorporated or that you could do better or public could do better so that you're better prepared next time? What's the one thing that you're going to change? I'll limit it to you.
All right, 9/11 and Sandy. What's your one lesson learned? I'm going to start with you, Walter.
It's the amount of fuel on hand is definitely on top of our list. We were running with our usual installations at belly tank under the generator for 24 hours runtime. Right now we're redeveloping a couple of sites in the northern New Jersey, and we're incorporating so we have 72 hours of fuel on hand in a distribution system, so that's a central fuel dump, and it goes through. It will fill all the belly tanks and generators. So I think that's become a new standard for us with our customers. We have to, you know, we want to have the 72 hours runtime plus the contracts we have.
Mike, you want to add to that?
I would say from a fiber optic side, having more actual materials in your yard stocked up, and what that means is having extra cable roll and fiber optic rolls and reels, because when these outages do occur, especially in the fiber side, well, it's happening not just for your company, but for all the fiber providers, and everyone's scrambling to get materials. turn panels, fiber optic cables, and splice trays and what have you. And then all of a sudden you it's like anything. It's like trying to get water at the local supermarket. You can't get those things, and the lead times on those are very long. So if you can get to your network, but you don't have the materials to fix it, so that's probably a big lesson learned, that you should really have an excess of materials on hand, not only for your primary network and your everyday use, but the actual just in case there's one of these issues again, because that was a big thing that we've seen, and lead times to get these materials were extremely long.
And real quick, Nathan?
Yes. Diverse electrical grids, connectivity, etc., is just not good enough. You need regional diversity. I think we're all very dependent on having our infrastructure in the New York area, and overly concerned with making sure that cables were coming out of two ends of the building, and it really didn't matter.
Yeah.
And John?
Yeah, for us it was all about people, making sure that we can dispatch people to their locations, keep them safe, stay in communication with them, keep them fed. And Walter, now I'm going to make sure we're keeping them clean. Yeah, for us it was all about people.
Rob?
Again, go back to the diversity piece. You can never be too diverse, never be well prepared or too prepared for anything. And to really take a step back and say, what are the things we did right? What are the things we could have done better? I think one of the things we really learned is that we can never have too many vendors supplying us, our utilities or any of our supplies to, help get our stuff up and running.
I'm going to ask that. I think it's time, right? I'm seeing folks for the next panel, but I did want to say that our panelists have graciously accepted that they'll be available in the hall after this panel if you guys have any additional questions for them. And also this panel will be on JSA TV after this, so go ahead and check us out. And thank you for your time and for considering such an amazing topic. So thank you.
Thank you.